Well, folks, it's after midnight, but I had a late nap, so I'm wide awake, I think, for this little episode. This is not a story, but it's information I felt like I should pass along to you. It's about my books. And several of you have been asking about my books, where to get them, what you needed to do, what they were. So I'm going to tell you about them. Now, I'm going to start with the first one. The first one was printed only for Kindle. I didn't know what I was doing, and I was going through Amazon, and Jan was helping me. So we said, we'll give it a try and see what happens. Now, the reason I was doing this book was because everybody was already into home computers, and they were getting into genealogy. It was the big thing. So you could go to different websites, you could request information, you could learn who your cousins were, you could communicate and exchange information. It was getting to be a really big thing. Well, for me, I knew it was time. My mother at the time was like 94 years old. She was the last of her generation. When I say her generation, I'm talking about big families where they had 10 and 12 and 13 children. And she was the last one. All of her siblings were gone. My dad's siblings were gone. All of her cousins were gone. And I knew that the family history was dying as well. I had to get what I could from her. She was the only source I had. Except I did have a cousin in Oklahoma who years ago had started doing the family trees, and he had sent me a lot of information on both sides of my family, my mother and my father, because they were also his family, his mother and his father's side. So I had his information to start with, and I started looking and getting my chart together. And on weekends, I would go visit my mother. And I remember the first night I sat down with her in the den, and I said, "Now, Mama, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to just pick up on the question and tell me what you can." So my first question was, how many children did Great-Grandma Brooks have? She said, "Well, there's 20 in all, counting the stepchildren. Now, Great-Grandma Brooks, her husband disappeared in the Civil War, and she had my grandmother and my Uncle Abram. And those were her two children. Was after so long, when my great-grandpa didn't return from the Civil War, she assumed he was dead. She remarried. This man had 8 children. I don't know anything about his wife. I'm assuming she probably died in childbirth. So there were 10 children when they married. And on top of that, they together had 10 more children, 20 children. She didn't raise all of them, but she raised most of them. So when I asked Mama how many children Great-Grandma Brooks had, she said, "Well, there's 20 in all," and she started naming them. And I said, "Hold it right there." I had my notebook and my pad, and I said, I can't remember all of this, and I can't write fast enough to get it down. Next time I come, I'm bringing a tape recorder with me, and that way you can tell me the stories, and I'll be able to get the information and not make any mistakes. So each time I came, I brought my tape recorder, and I would ask Mama a question, and she would start to tell me the story, and if I cut in to ask a question, it would confuse her. And I realized that. So when she started talking, I just let her go. And she'd go from one thing to another. She had a terrific memory. I put all of this information together, and I'm going to show you the book. It's all typewritten. See this? This is my family history. And I only went back as far as 1700s because couldn't get the rest of the information. It would have had to come from Europe. Now this is a picture on the front of this big notebook. And you see this barn? That was my Grandpa Rowlett's barn. And all the hillside you see behind him, and the split rail fence, that was his property. You see on the front it says, room at the foot of the bed. Well, you may wonder, what does she mean, room at the foot of the bed? That was the first title I thought of for my book. I said, this has to be the title. And I'm sure you can understand how it's related. My mother had 13 children, and she raised 9 of them. When we had company coming, they come piling in the front door, Mom, Dad, and how many kids they had with them. And where are you going to put all these kids when it comes bedtime? Bedtime, we had pallets on the floor. Everybody got a blanket. Everybody got a pillow. Mom always had a lot of pillows. And, as you would say, there was room at the foot of the bed. 3 kids at the head of the bed, 2 more at the foot of the bed. That's how I got my title for this book. And it's on Kindle. I happen to have this little Kindle, and I've had it for years. Haven't used it in years, but my book is on Kindle. If you're interested in reading it, because it is basically family history. So that was the first book. Well, let's go to the second book. I'm doing stories this time. Every time I remember something, I'd get on my computer and I'd do the story, what I remembered, how I remembered it, and that was it. I ended up with 100 stories in the first book. That's a lot of stories, but they were short stories. And let's see, I'm going to see how many pages. Let me look and see how many pages in this book. How about 397 pages? And I guarantee you'll read them all because they're just 3 and 4 pages long. And you can carry your book to the bathroom with you and keep it as a bathroom library book, because you can read a book, one story at a time. Anyway, I'm trying to decide how I'm going to get the book published. And it just so happened that where I live, we were having a social every Thursday afternoon, and a lot of the elderly people would come and gather and talk, and they all knew about my stories. They liked to hear them. And I would tell a story now and then, and so this gentleman was there. I was talking to him. He was quiet, very kind man. And he was saying, you need to get your book published. And I said, well, I want to, but I don't know how and what to do. And the first thing he said was, you go to the Carnegie Center. The Carnegie Center is connected to the university. And many of you know the name Andrew Carnegie, very famous man, very rich man. And you will find in almost any city, you're going to find a Carnegie Library, all sorts of businesses with the Carnegie name. And we just happened to have the Carnegie Library. So he said, you go down there, and he gave me instructions as to what to do. He said, they have people there who can edit your book for you. And when you get that done, then they will show you how to get it self-published. Just what I wanted to know. And that's exactly what I did. I went down. The first young man that was going to read my book, see how it was, he came back with no editing whatsoever. Nothing to change. And I was quite surprised because I was a little withdrawn about, I'm not a writer. I've never written anything in my life. And are they going to laugh at me and say, honey, take your book home and save it for your family? No, they didn't do that. He thought my writing was good. So I had to have somebody help me publish it. The young man that helped me happened to be on the New York Times bestseller list. He written quite a few books. He, I think, writes mostly science fiction. And I was hesitant about letting him read my book. I thought, oh gosh, he's going to laugh at me because I've never written anything in my life. But he didn't. In fact, when he read it, Jan, my daughter, was with me. When he read it, he said, you write like Irma Bombeck. Now, if you're my age, you know who Irma Bombeck was. She was a very good writer. She was funny, and she wrote several books. Everybody loved her, and I thought, to be compared with Irma Bombeck, that shocked me. So anyway, I get this book published. Now, the interesting thing about this, well, first I'll show you the book. I had to come up with the title for it. I had 100 stories. What was I going to call the book? Got it. Wait till you hear this one. Perfect. The young man said, we'll do a cover that would look like something Irma Bombeck would have on her book. So here you've got it, right here. Well, let me pull it back a little. There we go. And he tilted this word right here a little bit to give it the comedian look, you know. Now, you'll notice the house on the cover is a hand-painted picture of the house I grew up in. You see the little porch right here on the side? There's the swing on the front porch. Mama's front door, that's the bedroom. And there was an awning. You see the awning? She always had the vines growing up. That's a replica of my home place, which next year will be 100 years old. So this is the cover of my first book. Wait till you hear this one. Now, it did quite well. I didn't go to any readings except at one of the libraries in Corbin, and it was also a Carnegie library. But what I wanted to tell you about the Carnegie part is the man, my neighbor, who was telling me what to do, how to get it done, and was so encouraging, was an Andrew Carnegie descendant. That just blew my mind. I didn't learn this until after he died. I was totally amazed. Everyone knows who Andrew Carnegie was, and my neighbor was his descendant. So that was pretty fascinating to me. So anyway, that's how the first book got started. These are all true stories. Things I remembered, things my mother told me, whatever happened in my family, friends, just short stories that are for fun reading. Just something to fill your time when you can't think of anything else to do. And they don't last so long that you get bored with reading. Book number 1, keep that in mind, and you keep looking at this video so that you can be reminded of the books you want to order from Amazon. Now we go on, and people start asking, when you going to write another book? Oh my gosh. What I write about? I can't make up stories. I'm not a fake writer. But I said, I've got more stories. I can tell more stories. So I started on my computer, one story after another, and I ended up with 73 more stories. But the thing about this book was I was going to add recipes. I thought, I'll throw in recipes here and there, things my mother used to make, and there's always a little story with each recipe, so that's what I'll do. So I'll go back to the same young man who helped me before. I said, will you help me get this book published? Yes, he would. But then he said, your book is too long. You need to separate the stories from the recipes. Do a separate book of recipes. Okay. Now the second book, what in the world am I going to call it? I couldn't think of a thing. And when someone would ask, is she going to tell more stories? This is what my daughter Jan said. Of course she's going to tell stories. She's still breathing, isn't she? Well, that got put on the back of the book. Now, she and I were trying to figure, what will you call this book? We want something catchy. And Jan said, I know. Hold it, Lord, hold it. I'm not finished yet. There it is, the cover of my second book. That's me. My hair looks pretty messy, doesn't it? Well, that picture was taken at an elementary school where Jan and my son both went to school. And we were having a little reunion there of, I don't know how many years it has been, but everybody was gathering that had been a student at the school. And I was there as one of the mothers. And each person got up and told a little story about something interesting or something funny that happened when they were going to that school. So I got up and I told a story. And pictures got taken of me as I'm demonstrating. You can see, look here, got my hands up over my head. See this expression? I'm describing what someone looked like. Over here's another picture of me, and down in this corner, and of course you can see the finger pointed here. Yes, that's what got put on the front of this book. I won't say I look like a movie star, but what you see is what you get. So this book has 73 stories in it. You can see good sized print. Well, it's big enough that I can read it. That's what matters, because I need my print bigger and bigger. So anyway, here's one story says, I'll have the last dance. Oh, that's a good story, let me tell you. Here's another one says, Dinner's on Me. Well, you have to figure that one out. Let me see. Okay, here's one that says, Have I told you about my operation? You find these, you'll be able to relate to many of these stories. There are 2 or 3 sad stories. Of course, there's sadness in everyone's life, and you can't pretend it wasn't there, that it didn't happen. So you have to include that. Here's one that says, Like mother, like daughter. And to be honest with you, I don't even know what it's about. I have to read it myself. I've forgotten some of the stories I wrote. And just by the title, there's Treasures from the Attic. I'm not sure what that was about. Let's see. Yeah, it's about some of Mama's old antiques, cast-offs, what have you. Anyway, here I am on the back cover. You see, that's me right there. One of my favorite pictures. And hold it, Lord, hold it. I'm not finished yet. That's the other book. Okay. Following that were the recipes. Well, here we go. We got to have another title for a book. Titles for books are not easy to do because you want something that gets the reader's attention. You want a cover that when they look at it, they want to see what's inside that book. And so this one, I don't remember how many recipes are in here. I wanted colored pictures, but you know, I didn't have the budget for that. So I want just black and white pictures. And right here's a picture of Mama in the kitchen. Can you see that? She's got her big old butcher knife in her hand, fixing supper. And she's got her bib apron on. You can't tell much about it. You can see it at the bottom of her sweater. She has a bib apron on under that. And let's see, I don't know what else would... So there's my vegetable beef soup. Got some casseroles in here. And chicken stir fry. I'm telling you, I love chicken stir fry. I got the recipe out of Family Circle magazine in about 1986 and been making it ever since. And here's Mama's blackberry jam cake. Nothing any better. We have that every Thanksgiving and every Christmas. And let's see. Well, that's enough of that. So I wanted you to know about my books. And if you are interested in them, you can order them under my name. Now be sure, if you're looking just for my name, it's Patricia Estep O'Neill. That's what you're going to look for. And look under books. And it'll list the books. It may list this one as well. Now, I'm not pushing this book because it's basic family history. And we start with the Revolutionary War and we move forward hoping to get as much military and war history into the book that our families were related to. For instance, my great-grandfather disappearing in the Civil War. And well, there were other, and of course there was my brother who was killed in World War II. So you've got those to deal with. And I tried to avoid as much ill feeling because I don't like to read things that make me cry, but they're a part of history. They're a part of your family. And what you will read in my books are true stories. Some are funny. Some are just down to earth, the things you do every day and the things you dread every day, the places Mama wouldn't let you go, and the things you tried to get away with so that Mom and Daddy wouldn't find out. But Mama left us in 1998. She left before I got my books published. But she was the one that helped me the most. And I'll never forget the night. She was in a nursing home then. At that time, she was right at 100 years old. And one of the shows she watched on TV was The Golden Girls. And I had to laugh when Mama would describe Blanche. I don't know. She took the show as if it were fact, as if everything they did was real. And she could be so funny. So one night we were watching, I don't know if we were watching Hee Haw. I don't even know if Hee Haw was still on then. But we were watching country music. And this is how some of my information came about. Man gets up with his fiddle. He's playing with his fiddle. And Mama looks at the TV and she says, Pep used to play the fiddle. I looked at her and I said, well, Mama, you never told me that. I said, was he good? She says, yeah, he played the fiddle at all of the community affairs. That just floored me because my grandfather was a businessman. He was a stern, strict little old man, and people were scared of him, according to Mama. Things went his way, and I couldn't picture this little old man with a big handlebar mustache standing up in front of a crowd of people and partying, dancing, and playing a fiddle. That was my grandfather, Pap. So that story came by accident, just by seeing someone playing a violin on TV. Many stories came about just by being reminded of something that had happened at one time, and Mama would come up with another story. So, if you like things like that, you like short stories, and a good bit of humor, sometimes you have to look for the humor, and you have to imagine if you were there, what would it have been like? So now you know about my books. You know where to get them, and they've got plenty of them because they can print them as soon as you put your order in. And by the way, they are $15 each. So it's 12:30 now, and I think I'm working up to getting ready to go to bed myself. I've got 2 or 3 more stories I want to tell you in the next few days. I've been kind of busy. My car's been here and there and everywhere except in my hand because I've had air conditioner problems. Oh my gosh, you don't want to hear all those problems that we have with our cars. But, and I'll tell you what, I made spaghetti sauce for supper. I wouldn't even let my dog have that spaghetti sauce. And I put that recipe on YouTube. But isn't it amazing how you can make the same dish over and over and over, and sometimes it's delicious, and other times you think, whatever possessed me to make this? Today was one of those days. So I hope you order my books And I want you to tell me what you think about the stories. Now, some of the stories that are in the book, I'll be telling you about them here on YouTube. So, they may not sound exactly the same because, you know, your mind goes this way and mine goes that way, and sometimes it doesn't go anyway. Thank you for watching me. And my subscribers are building and building, and I will soon have 7,000 subscribers. I am just overwhelmed. There's no other way to explain it. I had no idea people would take to my stories the way they have. And you find the humor in them. That's what's wonderful, when you can laugh at the things I tell. And it pleases me so much, makes me feel so good. And the Lord has been good to me. And I hope He's been good to you too. I'm sure He has. So good night to everybody. And I'll be waiting to hear from you.